Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Hassan Talks podcast. This episode comes as well as part of the series that I'm starting recently, which is Sudanese Creators, where we'll be able to host and have amazing Sudanese talents from all over the globe to explore more what they've been doing lately and the amazing potentials they have, and also to give more opportunity to our Sudanese communities to be out there and give them some sort of a platform. And this podcast is always a platform for Sudan and its people. And I couldn't be happier to have on this episode Mohamed Gaafar, all the way from the UK. He's a poet, and he's also a very active member of Sudanese Diaspora Network. These guys have been doing amazing work in the last 2 years with the Sudanese revolution, and also supporting Sudan during the pandemic and during the flood season and so on. So on this episode, we will talk all about that and even more. So I hope you enjoy the episode. And Mohamed Gaafar, welcome to the podcast.
Hassan, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm so glad that you're creating these important spaces. And even if we look a year or 2 years ago, a lot of these spaces and organizations and initiatives, they didn't really exist. So it's great to be here. It's great to be able to talk about this. And yeah, I'm excited. I mean, mashallah, you've been going strong with the podcast. So yeah, I hope you'll continue to do so and continue to bring light to what people are working on.
Well, thank you. I forgot to mention as well that you're a podcaster too, so you have your own podcast as well.
Yeah. I mean, so I've got my podcast. It's on a little bit of a break at the moment. We've spoken before about timing and in terms of keeping consistent with it. And yeah, it is one of the toughest things, I'd say, especially when life hits and you just got other things to juggle.
It is. It's really tough. It's really tough. And maybe this is one of the things that people sometimes don't realize, that if you're creating some sort of content, people just see sometimes the end result of it, and they don't see the work that you've put into this. And it's a big thing. And of course, I believe also it's a big thing to create some content or some real work for a society or for a big community like the Sudanese Diaspora Network. So I want you to kind of introduce the network to who's ever not familiar with it, and take us into their work lately.
Yeah, sure. So the Sudanese Diaspora Network, or SDN as we tend to go by, it's a youth and young professionals led global network. And the kind of three of its main pillars are to unify, mobilize, and empower the diaspora towards a sustainable Sudan. And so, if you look at, as we kind of mentioned, alhamdulillah, now we're seeing lots and lots of really great organizations doing lots and lots of really great work. And I think if we look back a year or two ago, maybe 2+ years, you'll see that a lot of the organizations, they weren't necessarily youth-led. There was youth presence, but there wasn't this youth-led version. And I think there was always that appetite from the Sudanese youth, the Sudanese diaspora, grassroots. It's, everywhere there's been that appetite. And what happened with the revolution is it showed that youth-led does work. And I guess, being in the diaspora, we saw what was happening in Sudan and the Sudanese revolution, and there was this kind of this question as, how do we get involved? How do we contribute? And so that's when SDN.world was kind of, the idea started to form. And yeah, it became this kind of, it was formed as a vehicle for the global diaspora to kind of take part and to try and further the Sudanese revolution as much as we could from our positions. And so, yeah, that's kind of its origins. I wasn't part of the sort of founding, but I was a very early member, and I've been, very happy to get involved in what we've been doing. Yeah, and alhamdulillah, this year we were very active, as you saw, and that's how I guess we got to know each other as well.
Yeah. This year you guys had an amazing activities during Ramadan, like almost no, it was actually like daily activities, for the whole month, and of course during the pandemic it was kind of necessary, I think.
Yeah, subhanallah. I mean, yeah, so we had this Layali Ramadan program, and it kind of had two aspects to it. It had the kind of the fundraising element, which we throughout our events would continuously talk about the fundraising aspects, which I'll come on to in a second. And it also had all of the events and the kind of the community side, because like you said, this was a very different Ramadan for most of us. No Taraweeh, so the nightly prayers,
Yeah.
no real community um, sense in terms of going to the masjid and breaking your fast with others. Me just thinking back to my previous Ramadan experiences, I was based in London, not with my family. So I would go to the masjid all the time and break my fast with just, other Muslims around the table. You don't know them. You just, enjoy those moments. And so very, very different. And yeah, we put on, we put on a lot of events. And I think just to give you a kind of some insight into our thought processes behind that as well, we didn't just, like, for us it was so important that the events added something, because what we had found was at that time during lockdown, it was almost like content creators or just everybody was just creating more and putting more out there. Everyone was going live, everyone was, and so there was so much there. But the fact for us was that it's Ramadan. Like, we don't want necessarily people to just come onto the Instagram page and waste their time. But actually, if we can add something valuable and at the same time create a community feel, then actually that's a gain. So, we had daily Quran recitations, we had tafsirs, we had, we had different talks. We had talks about mental health. We had talks about relationships, all kinds of things. So it was very much about, how do we add value? And then another one, which I think was a very well received series, was the Ramadan Ma'ana, which I think you were on, right?
Yeah, I was on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one, I really enjoyed actually just seeing into, like, getting a little peek into other people's lives. So that every day we had, I think, a different person taking over the SDN page, and they would just post about what they were doing in Ramadan, and whether it's helping their family with the cooking or and so on. And then in the end, we ended with this this global sort of event, which we have done as a kind of iftar event across different cities, but in person. And this time it was very much sort of digital joining in. There were talks, there were performances from different artists and different poets, and even if I give you even more insight into how much we actually had to plan this, was we set up this Google Calendar, and we imported the prayer times for like suhoor, so like the pre meal, pre-dawn meal, or is it dusk? But suhoor and futur. And then we also put maghrib, all those times in, so that people, and not just because we have a UK people, Sudan people, and then we have East Coast and kind of West Coast. So we put all of those times in. Wow. And then we kind of like looked at what space. Yeah, we're like, what space do we have left in the calendar to put events in? And we tried our best to put them in, because the events were really good. And I think as we started to realize, like, everyone can't make every event, we did try and make sure that these are all being captured and documented so that we could come back to them later.
Yeah. For somebody who's like a viewer or a follower of the community, I don't even remember how I got to know the SDN network at that time, how I followed you guys. I don't really remember. I kind of lost track of that. But what I remember is, like, it was some, like, like a TV channel. You know, Ramadan people usually like follow a specific TV channel. For me, like that was the SDN. It was like they recite Quran at some hours, and the some other hours like they have this Ramadan Ma'ana, and then you also have like talks and motivation speakers and poets and programs and stuff. It was like a proper TV channel that's just on Instagram, done by people in our age. It was magnificent, man. Like I think I've said this to you guys that you don't realize the great work that you guys have done, but it was really brilliant, and I'm sure that's not the last thing that you guys have done. So more to come for sure. But what I want to say, and this I have this question for a long time. Sudanese Diaspora Network, that's the official long term, and it's the short term or the abbreviation is SDN, right?
Mm-hmm.
So SDN as well, like it can go for Sudan, like short for Sudan.
Well, so you're asking if there was any thought in that?
Yeah, was it intentional or complete coincidence?
No, I think it was intentional. I think it definitely was intentional. As far as I'm aware, I think so. It's part of the attraction of those three, picking the acronym. But yeah, I'm gonna have to tell people that feedback about the TV channel, because they'll really enjoy that. And as well, you actually came to the Eid Azuma event as well. So we did this kind of Eid event over Zoom. Again, this was kind of in peak lockdown, and I think we were on a call for maybe like 4 or 5 hours by the end of it. And it was so surprising that, most people actually stayed on throughout. Like most events that you have, you kind of see the numbers like dwindle. But we got, an international audience, and we got people who stayed on throughout. And it's funny because we came up with that idea maybe like a week or 5 days before Eid, and we were kind of like, we just sort of said, should we do something for Eid? And then we just started brainstorming, came up with the idea, and then people were like, I'm not sure you have enough time. And then we were like, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's see. But yeah, I mean, I think, it was a really good experience, but it also, I think it did definitely take a toll, and it really needed us to we really had to band together to kind of be that consistent, in terms of all of those events. It really was a massive group effort. So there's, so many people whose effort and hard work went into that.
Yeah, I can only imagine the hard work that you guys have put through Ramadan, and then the cherry on top was the Eid Zoom call or the Eid Azuma. That was also very, very nice, and we had amazing speakers and amazing artists, and also amazing games through the through the Azuma. That was very, very nice. Yeah, I like it feels like I don't know, a year ago or two, but this was just months ago, man.
It does. It really does. And yeah, those games, like it was like the day before we were trying to trialing them and seeing how they would work, because obviously, like with Zoom, you have these kind of like breakout room features, and we were like, okay, let's see how much we can use those.
Yeah.
And there was this big plan about how, you would be able to move certain people in one, like clockwise, and then move the other, and then the other people would move themselves anti-clockwise. And in the end, none of that worked. And we just kind of went, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put people in breakout rooms, and then we'll give them a few minutes, and then we'll take them out and then randomly assault them again, and hope that they're not with somebody they've already been with. Because Zoom wasn't ready for, what's the game called again? People Bingo.
Something like this, yeah. Yeah.
But most of the other ones worked well, alhamdulillah.
No, it did work well. You were the host, I remember, with another host. I forgot her name.
Samar and Azza. Yeah, those were the two hosts.
Yeah. That was a bit difficult, I think, to manage, like over Zoom, to host a group of people from their screen. That's a completely different experience.
Yeah, and I think if you've seen we're now in kind of like phase 3 of the pandemic, let's say. If we kind of splitting into the quarters, with March to, March being quarter 1, and then March being phase 1, summer being phase 2, and then winter kind of being phase 3. So what I've noticed is a lot of these like much bigger events now, they're doing it like webinar style. So there's no real interaction with the kind of, hosts and the speakers. But, in the earlier phases, a lot of people didn't really know how to use Zoom, let alone do webinars. So it was all kind of like everyone in there, and then you'd have like someone's aunt chatting in the background, and like somebody's cat purring, and you're like,
True,
okay.
true. But the good thing is like at that phase, the first phase, as if it was like trial and error, people were accepting mistakes, people were kind of okay with everything. So everybody's learning, like big companies or like individuals. So it was completely okay to actually shoot your shot and do whatever you want to do, spontaneously. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, is that we were just willing to try, and it worked in the end, alhamdulillah. But yeah, like you said, there was, so on top of the kind of the event side, which I guess is like the part of the outward facing side, there's the kind of the fundraising campaigns, which I thought I said I'd mention. So we had 3 major fundraising campaigns this year. And all of them were kind of collaborative campaigns. And the first one was the Layali Ramadan one. So we managed to fundraise $16,000, which is really, really good. And essentially what we did was we kind of had how that was going to be split up. So about almost 10K, we bought PPE here, and we shipped that to Sudan, to 6 COVID centers in Khartoum and Durman. And then a further 5K went to this organization called Youth for Change and Development. And they supplied PPE to 9 different hospitals in Sudan, and those were mainly outside of Khartoum. And then a further 1,000 went to this initiative called the Sudan Safe Initiative. And that went towards distributing food packages and sort of hand sanitizer, as well as generally raising awareness on COVID. And yeah, so that kind of brings you onto the Sudan Safe Initiative, which it is still going, actually, and it's this coalition between a number of US and grassroots organizations who are basically working towards improving health conditions in Sudan. And obviously it was initially focused around COVID. And so kind of on top of that 1K that we fundraised through the Layali Ramadan event, a set of, that campaign, we also had SDN members who are sort of sitting within that collaboration. And there was a sort of standalone Sudan the Safe collaboration, which raised $13,000 sort of towards COVID projects. And so that was the kind of the COVID related fundraising campaigns. And then there was some other ones, but I don't know if you've got any questions specifically on the COVID ones.
Well, for the COVID one, I think it was a little bit complicated, specifically in Sudan, like, because now you're based in the UK, and a lot of members of the Diaspora Network are based in the US and other countries. And maybe like why you guys decided to start the campaign or this kind of relief for Sudan. I think you see what's the situation going in your countries, in where you're based right now, and you see how COVID hits really hard. And then at the same time, you have to kind of think about your home country, homeland, and how things are going right there, and try to kind of balance, maybe like it's easy to get a mask in the UK, but in Sudan, that's a completely different story.
Yeah. And I think you basically, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, also we had, I think this year, sort of, we have these NHS charity organizations, so like the National Health Service, and that's funded by the government, but there are these charities that fundraise on their behalf for like families and that kind of stuff. And this year, that usually they hadn't fundraised more than about 150,000. And I think this year they raised over 40 million, and one of those, I think it actually might be more than 100. But one particular fundraising campaign went kind of viral, and it raised 20 million. So like, we're just talking, I think we're talking in maybe in different kind of different scales to a certain extent. Like, what we fundraise compared to what was like what people were able to fundraise here for certain campaigns is different scales. But I think we are moving in that direction. And I think it was, like you said, one of the reasons why there was the kind of raising awareness was because initially I think there was this idea that was kind of going around like, oh, Sudan's going to be fine with COVID. Like it's not going to, we've got the heat, or people are already dying from, hunger and all of this. Yeah. So it's like COVID's not going to get us, something else will. And like you said, we knew that the hospitals, like the thing is we are predominantly US and UK based, but we do have some Sudan based people. And they were telling us like the hospitals, there's no PPE, so that's why we kind of focused on the hospitals. Like we didn't really send any PPE to kind of individuals. It was more towards the hospitals and the doctors. And I mean, it's funny. Well, not funny, but like you said, there were points where it was really bad here and it was really bad in the US. And you're right. Like there's an element of like mental gymnastics where you go, here is bad, but it must be worse there. And I think actually for a long time, it wasn't worse there. And even people now, they still wonder, like, why did Africa not get hit as badly generally with COVID?
That's a kind of tricky question to answer. I don't think it's very easy. People say, because I don't know, Africa is not very touristic in general, so not much of COVID movement is happening. At the same time, maybe because there are not real equipments to measure the real numbers, of COVID as well. The people are really careless. So it's a very tricky question to answer, but you assume the worst, that COVID is actually existing, in every part of the planet, basically.
Yeah. You have to. I think you have to assume that. It's kind of like, people assume, and I think maybe the assumption is correct. Like India, their numbers are supposedly really quite low, and everyone's just kind of like a country with 1 point however many billion. Like there's just no way that it could be
it's
as
weird,
low. And even like, I remember, I think at one point China their number just kind of tailed off, and you're like, what happened? Did they just
literally
stop recording?
not extra one case at some point. It's like, doesn't make any sense,
No.
Yeah.
But I think it was just that, the kind of trying to like speaking to people who were in Sudan and identifying the ways that we could help, and help them be prepared, because of the fact that there was this kind of like, in the same way that the UK was behind Italy and Spain in terms of the kind of onset of the peaks, Sudan and a lot of places in Africa were behind in terms of the peaks as well. And so it was kind of like, if it's bad here, then it could, very well be bad there. Let's try and help. So I think that's kind of what our thought process was behind that.
Yeah, I think that was very, very important. I think also it was kind of significant to raise awareness as well, for COVID. So you say like, hey guys, I am based in this country, and the situation is like this in this place. So be careful, don't like gather in small places, or, avoid contacting people, like saying hi, don't shake hands and stuff like this. So it's also raising awareness was part of our responsibility in the diaspora as well. It's not just sending PPA or fund reliefs or stuff like this. It's also mental kind of preparation.
And it's funny you say that, because I'll, like, my dad will be on the phone with relatives in Sudan, and throughout the pandemic, he's kind of always been saying like this, this is very serious. Like here, we haven't left the house in X number of days, or here we don't leave the house without a mask and hand sanitizer and washing your hands, and all this kind of stuff. Like even now, every time one of us enters the house, if he's in the living room and he hears the center, he'll be like, have you washed your hands? And we're like, okay, let's, but it's now just part of that is that, like you said, that forewarning, and just saying this is very serious. And I think it did take sort of a number of months and a number of those conversations. And I think, that is also part of the role as well.
Yeah, it is. For me, the funny thing was it was kind of reversed. Like my relatives in Sudan, they watch the news, they see okay, Spain is doing really, really bad. So they contact me, say, Hassan, are you okay? Are you safe? Be careful. Say, guys, don't worry about me. I'm taking care of myself. It's you that you need to focus on yourselves. Don't like just gather in small places and like avoid being social that much. It's kind of impossible for Sudanese people actually to stay to be antisocial. Like that's a mission impossible, I think. I don't know. Like this year, it did not happen. The people still gather and meet and shake hands and hug, even with the pandemic. So
Yeah, it's tough, and it's tough like because the thing is it's not just there, it's here as well. Um, and I think it's both Sudanese culture and maybe like for example, you go to, I don't know if mosques and stuff have reopened, but like they're closed. I think they might have closed again now, but whilst they were open, you know, people are wearing masks inside, socially distanced inside. But then you see, as soon as you go outside, people want to shake your hand, and it's kind of like, we're not supposed to be doing that, guys.
yeah.
So it is tough, and I think one of the toughest things might be the kind of economic as well impact on
Of course.
lots of families as well.
Of course, we're talking about a country that's already going through economical crisis, and that's one of the reasons that actually the revolution started in the first place. The country has not recovered from that, and then the COVID crisis came, and the pandemic just like puts the country like to the ground. And if there's like a lower level, I think Sudan is right there. So this is one of the reasons as well. I think you guys kind of try to help Sudan through the flood season and what happened in late August, beginning of September, where the floods basically destroy the infrastructure, if there was any infrastructure in the country, and put so many families away from their homes. So I want to hear, what did SDN do in that part of
Yeah. Okay. So there's one other like kind of major campaign that we did, and it feeds into the like the flood relief efforts. So the one that we kind of did, it was focused around June 3rd, which was June 3rd, 2019, huge massacre of Sudan, in Sudan, of the revolutionaries. So we I guess we had sort of building up to that date, we realized that we wanted to do something to kind of commemorate that, and also commemorate the martyrs who they had lost their lives in that fight for a new Sudan. And we kind of started to think about, how do we do that? We thought about how Sadaqa Jariyah, or continuous charity, sort of in their name, would be something very beneficial, and something that would be an amazing thing if we could do that. So then we essentially sort of had been discussing this with some of our close collaborators. So in the end, it was between Matar Blue Movement, SAPA, which is SASA, which is Sudanese Abroad Students and Alumni, and Feel a Heart. And we kind of created this collaboration called Back to Blue. And like I said, it was to create this commemoration for the martyrs. And we did a fundraising campaign, and we were able to raise $7,000, alhamdulillah. So with that money, we built a hand pump well in West Darfur, which was it's actually in the Kerending camp for internally displaced people. And then a further almost 3K went to the Feel a Heart Family Initiative. So again, we just talked about the economic support, or the economic downturn, and this was actually essentially economic stimulus. It was giving families either money for them to be able to buy food and sort of supplies, or just giving them food. And so Feel a Heart, who's the organization, they're based in Sudan, they're on the ground, they sort of distributed that. I think I'll need to double check, but I think they estimated that it was between 10,000 and sort of 20,000 people that impacted. Mashallah. And they're just generally an amazing organization. And then we had the UMST Students Initiative, who we gave, I think, $500, and they used that on medical equipment. And finally, another 500 on the Green Dream Sudan. So this is a kind of tree planting initiative. And again, this is Sadaqah Jariyah, so they'll be planting trees, mangoes, lemons, all kinds of fruit trees in the name sort of the martyrs. And then I guess after we kind of, that was working through, the flood was happening. So in Sudan, and even though we are a Sudanese diaspora used to seeing flooding either when we're there or kind of yearly floods, this was very, very different. I think it was clear to many of us that was the case. And yeah, it was, I think, maybe 70 years we hadn't seen floods and the Nile rising to that kind of level. And so we quickly kind of started to think, how do we do something? And we actually just went back to the same group that we were in of that collaboration, and we said, okay, let's do something for this for the Sudan. So we kind of created this Sudan Flood Alliance, and then started brainstorming. And the thing is that through our previous experiences, we had seen that the Nafir initiative was doing well in terms of fundraising, and sometimes it makes it more difficult when you start to sort of create several branches going towards the same place. So we kind of thought, okay, what is it that we kind of can do well that other people might appreciate? And so we just created this, we created this video. And yeah, it was put together between those initiatives, and we released it, shared it across our platforms. And I think it, might have gotten over kind of 15,000, 20,000 views across everybody, not just on one organization. And even the kind of the platform who had been raising the money, they kind of reached out and thanked us for the video and showed that it really benefited. I think it might have helped with a sort of 15-20k dollars kind of boost to the campaign. So it was it was really really good. And I think it's just one of those things where you go, okay, what can we actually do?
Exactly. I think that's a very nice way to end like all this amazing work that you guys have been doing. Is what can we actually do? It's like being creative is very, very important, and also having this will to contribute all the time is also very important. But what matters is you don't want to do something that's repetitive. You don't want to do something that drives people away from the cause, because the main purpose here is getting people to understand what's happening in the country, and at the end they help. So that's the main goal. So you don't want to do something, of course, like like Nafir is doing an amazing work, so you don't want to kind of repeat what they say in a way so people start doubting why there are two different initiatives here, fishy or stuff. So you just, okay, they have this ground, they let them have it, and then you do something else. And also it comes back to the importance of having a social media platform. Like, I think still people don't really appreciate the impact of social media in our lives. They say it's just a video, or it's just like a meme, or it's just like a text or whatever, or just a post. But no, it's way, way bigger than that. So I've seen these people who talk about, for example, sexual harassment by just few slides, and it reaches everywhere. It changes. People start questioning themselves from just small posts like this. So you can actually do so much as long as you have the will to do it, and just be creative and brainstorm with your group, and you can do so much. You don't have to stick to the same old classic ways to help or to contribute.
And I think, actually, interestingly enough, like sometimes friction in the system, like in terms of just a bit of resistance as to how you could do something, actually can change the outcome or change the process that you take. So like for us, we had seen that there is friction in creating a fundraising campaign for Sudan, not just because some of these platforms, whether it's GoFundMe or, have issues. I mean, LaunchGood actually were really good with us. They didn't have any issues with it being in Sudan. But I know that other we actually had to pause the campaign at one point because of the status of the bank bank account we had provided, but then also transfer of money to Sudan and then transferring from dollars, etc., etc.
It's a
So
big thing, yeah.
there's all that friction, right? And that what that led us to realize is that, like you said, why should we double it up? Why, we don't know what is needed on the ground. Let's support something that's working. Let's support somebody or an organization that they are interested in doing things as well in a transparent and in a in the right way. And I think, like you said, the power of social media is huge, because ultimately the fundraising links, that where are they shared? They're shared across social media.
Yeah.
And like you said, again, speaking out on different different things is huge. Like I think this year we have seen like how important it is to create sort of content, or create these things that raise awareness, the ones that actually end up kind of proliferating or getting shared and a lot. Those are the ones that are easily consumable, but also provide a lot of value. So we've seen all these like infographics and colors, and like there's almost a template for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, ultimately those things are beneficial. Like I've read a lot of those different ones, and they help you understand what's going on in the world. And I think especially now, where sometimes like our generations are more fed up with like what mainstream news is reporting on, we're kind of like, well, let's raise our own voices. And I think that's what the power of social media has. And even just so during the Black Lives Matter, like the kind of the peak of the movement, obviously a lot of great information was being shared. And yeah, one of the things that not necessarily SDN, but some of the other organizations and stuff, we released this video, and different people talking about their experiences. And also I was fortunate enough that they wanted to use a poem that I had written, and yeah, it literally went viral. I think it got like 100,000 views or something. So it's like, you don't even know, like it's never about it going viral, but I think that's always this kind of, wow, okay, like this many people are interested
it's
in
part
hearing
of it. It's
about
not the ultimate goal, but it's part of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All these great work for Sudan. Either you do stuff for SDN, or you do stuff by yourself. It brings me back to I think a problem that we all have in the diaspora, which is, how can I help Sudan, or how can I help the people in Sudan? And I'm being in the diaspora, and sometimes you start questioning, like, do I really, like, am I actually contributing? I do remember this, because like in the days of the revolution, where like the country is changing upside down, and we're here, I don't want to say living our lives, but we also have a life to go through. Still, in the same time, our minds are so busy with Sudan and the problems there, and we are always in this dilemma the whole time. It's Sudan and our current lives. Are we really contributing? Do I have to really be in Sudan, in Khartoum, to be actually helpful, or can I do something from here? And I think also, like, one of the things that people don't realize, it's like, it doesn't matter how much you do from our point of view. I think we never feel like it's enough. You feel like, no, I'm missing. I'm still not on the ground. I think I need to do more. I'm not really satisfied with what I've done, because I missed like the revolution. I missed this. I missed that. Do you have the same doubts?
It's such a tricky. It's like a dichotomy in a sense. Like you kind of, you never. So like, to a certain extent, you're like, you don't necessarily completely feel like you're from here, say, or from Spain, but then at the same time, you're not really from, you're not necessarily from Sudan, in the sense that, I've never lived there for a significant amount of time. So you kind of get caught in between. And I feel like we all, like, our relationship with Sudan, it kind of changes over time. And I think actually, even though it was really hard, like the thing is there's this like diaspora's guilt, right? So we we feel guilty that we're here, and then we feel guilty that we can't necessarily help in a meaningful way. So then like when we get that guilt, we're kind of like, yeah, but we're not as like bad. We're better off than there, like in terms of like there were people who, you know, died in the revolution,
Yeah.
right? And I think so we can't necessarily get too caught up in those like those feelings, because I guess like how helpful are they? I think what is more impactful is if we try to understand our relationship with Sudan better, and yeah, and then like you said, we need to find creative ways of actually having a meaningful impact. So is that raising awareness here?
Yeah.
You know, speaking up, like just through what we were doing, partially SDN and partially just what the Sudanese community in the UK was doing. You know, we made a lot of noise. You know, almost weekly we were at Trafalgar Square.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
nice.
we were organizing like sort of solidarity protests. We were outside the embassy a lot of the time. We were sending letters and tweeting at MPs to try and get them to you know, debate what to do in Sudan. So yeah, I guess it's kind of like how useful do those feelings of guilt eventually, like what comes out of them? But then
Yeah.
the other thing is like when I say about your relationship with Sudan, like is it aspirational? Like I think for me, for a long time, there were aspirational elements, like, but I think as well the psychology of like the, you know, this like the savior complex is not necessarily helpful. And
Yeah.
also like
No.
I still to a certain extent romanticize going and living in Sudan and having an impact, but at the same time I'm still here and I'm still trying to do that impact here. Like so yeah, is it aspirational? And like yeah, what do you want more, and are you actually going about getting more? Because I think previously I wanted more but I didn't go about it. And I think yeah, my younger brother actually said a while ago, he kind of said, you know, people, they always say like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that, and they think that once they, you know, leave their job or once they have more time they will do that. But actually if you wanted to do that, you would be doing it right now.
Yeah, you'd
Like
have
you would
done it.
find a
Yeah.
way, you would find time.
True.
Sorry, I've spoken for a yeah, kind of got.
No, that's actually, yeah, it's connected to the identity crisis thing, you know, being a third culture kid thing as well. It's way too complicated, but I do believe, like I do believe the revolution that took place last year, it was a chance for us, the people in the diaspora, actually a kind of revolution for us as well, you know, to learn more about our country, to understand the culture, the history even more. It's not just about changing the system or the regime. It was a change for us as well. So there's so many things, of course, people might, maybe they'll never see, you know, okay, you're living outside, you're just having good time. It's way more complicated than that. So you start, like you said, like you have this uh, feeling that like, always want to go back to Sudan and live there and stuff. For me, it's like I feel like I'm a representative all the time. I feel like whatever I do here, because there's a good number of Sudanese members in the UK. Here we're not much in Spain. Like in Madrid, we're 42 or 43. I think there's one guy who came a few weeks ago. So we're really little, like we're not much people, or very few. So whatever I do here is like, the Sudanese guy have done this, and it's actually me. It's very easy to identify, you know. So I feel like I'm a representative. It's a little bit of, it's like pressure, you know, like I have to behave all the time, don't do something bad. You might like screw up so much for people who want to come over or stuff like this. And it's like you fight with these things all the time within yourself, you know, and then you try to do something helpful and contribute back to the community or back to the society. So you release the guilt, but it comes back, it hits back again. You know?
Yeah, actually, like something I was reading the other day, they were talking about this this concept called third space theory. So like, you know how there's like third culture kid, third space theory, it's basically like saying, it's exactly what we were talking about, is the idea of being stuck in the middle. So it's like, say the first space is where you currently reside, and the second space is where maybe your like home is, and then the third space is where you actually occupy, which is kind of in between the two of them. So you kind of, it's like you're simultaneously a foreigner almost in both sort of home nations, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the points, I think the point that you made about being the representative, it kind of brings me on to like what I guess, like there were parallels, I think, between the Black Lives Matter movement and the Sudanese revolution. And I think there were parallels not just in, well, one of the things I think was that like idea of being a representative, right? Like for me within the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a lot of like, I felt like sometimes there was a lot of pressure on me to say this or to say that. And then at the same time, I think, like you said, when during some of the kind of, you know, most violent parts of it in terms of the murder of George Floyd and just, it was the kind of, I've actually over the last few months have really cut my social media consumption, because during those months, it was really hard to not feel like you were just currently on a nerve end, you know, and like sometimes trying to go into work when this is happening and like none of your colleagues have any idea that your head is just somewhere completely else. And I think that was almost an identical feeling to the Sudanese revolution in a way. It was like something is really going on, but actually no one else, like apart from if you're Sudanese or apart from if you're Black, has an idea that this is such a big thing, right?
True, yeah. True, yeah, man. You're bringing so much memories now to for example, during the Black Lives Matter, actually, being Black, it means that everything you post has to be like, you know, put like carefully, because you could say something that be taken, you know, you're part of the Black community, why are you saying this? You should say that. And it was so much pressure. Same thing walking down the street at that time, being Black, everybody's looking at you, expecting for you to say something, you know, as if I am the one who initiated the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, I'm just the one who like faces racism as everybody else, you know. I'm a victim, not like a guy who's to save the day here. So it's a lot of problems that we go through in the diaspora, and the idea of not feeling home all the time it's a big thing. I think we need to kind of learn how to live with this.
Yeah, I mean the way I've tried to like do it is to reframe it in my mind as, and I know sometimes the thing is like people have said it to me before. They'd be like, oh, but you get the benefit of being from both. And like in certain in certain capacities, when someone says that to you, you're like, that's not a thing. But I think if you start to realize all the ways that you actually benefit from being here and there, or being from here and from there, then actually you start to think, okay, like there's no other version of me that is kind of, you know, there's no other version of me that is more me than I am now. And the only way that I am me is from being from both of these places at the same time. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other, you know. But yeah, it's like you said about the kind of Black Lives Matter, even like sometimes I posted sometimes I would post stuff and I would say something because it's just like, this is what I think, this is what I feel. And then you'd get people who would kind of be like, oh, but like this and that and this. And you're like, sometimes I just wouldn't have the like capacity to even respond. Like I'd just be like,
it's too much.
It's just like, just figure it out. Like, you know, in particular, one of the moments that really kind of got to me was the black squares. Because it was
very
like
controversial though.
Yeah, I was like, nobody has said anything. Like half of you haven't said anything up till now, and you're just posting black squares and you're done. That's it. So I kind of posted some stuff, and then like lots of people were like, oh, but you're saying like this and that. And I was like some of them are actually close friends as well. Like, so I'm not even meaning to kind of like at them or anything. I'm just saying like, you know, it's hard to have that kind of mental capacity all the time. But I guess like, I'm interested to get your take on like, so you might have seen, I know you're a football fan, so you might have seen the kind of discussions around like the use of black, and, you know, in certain countries, obviously it's the word black is a derivative of negro,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is it negro in
Negro, yeah.
Spanish? Negro. And Cavani, obviously, with his reply to a fan. I don't know if you saw
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I've seen that, and I've seen another one which took place also 2 weeks ago in between
In
PSG
Istanbul.
and
Yeah.
Istanbul. Yeah, yeah. Of
Demba.
these two, man, I think they're very different. And actually, I was actually, to be honest, I wanted again back to what to post, what not to post. I wanted to make an episode on the podcast, and I recorded one episode, then I deleted it about this.
You deleted it now.
Yeah,
That's saved in the archive somewhere, surely.
man, that's the thing, like it's a little bit controversial. So I discussed this with my friends, but I kept it to myself at the end, and I did not post it. So the first one, what I understood what Cavani did, he replied to one guy in a post by saying "mi negrito." And what I know from in Latin America, if somebody is like close to you, or you wanna like you're being very like you adore them or something, you call them negrito, even if they're not black, like my little blackie or something like this. So from their perspective, this is completely okay and nice and sweet. But then if you take it to a bigger scale, this is terrible. So the good thing, Cavani completely understood the idea after he was being like, confronted with it, and he took it back. That was really good. So I think the reaction is very important. Like you make the mistake, but then you understand what you've done, then you correct the mistake. That's quite good. The other situation in Turkey, that was worse. That was way worse. So what happened was I don't know. Are you aware of the details of that incident?
I'm aware of the details, but it sounds like you know some intricacies that maybe I've not picked up on yet.
Well, probably I think you love football as well. But what happened was, the referee was supposed to send off one of the assistant managers who was I forgot his name, Pierre something. Pierre something. I think it's from Cameroon. He was supposed to send him off, and there were like few assistant managers. So the main referee is asking the fourth official which one, and both are Romanians. So he said the black one, I think he said it in Romanian, which was Al Negro, the black one. And that was just terrible in every aspect of it. You are officiating a game on an international level. The official languages of UEFA Champions League are English, German, and French, I think in that order, or English, French, and German in that order. So you use the terminologies of these. You're not actually supposed to communicate in your own local language between the officials. You're not supposed to do that. And if you do, you should know what to say, what not to say. Because, for example, if one player went to another black player, let's say Neymar in this case, and called him negro, the referee said, "Oh, no, that's okay, because in Romania, negro means like just the black. It's the color. It's not an offense." So this was really terrible. And I was glad that actually one of the players, Dembaba, was protesting and talking to referees like this is wrong. You're not supposed to identify him by his color. First of all. Second of all, even if you do that, you don't say negro. You don't say negro. And then the two teams, first Dembaba moved his team to step out of the game. Then the second team, led by Neymar and Mbappe, decided not to continue the game as well. So this was kind of controversial, very controversial as well. So many people are asking questions like, why are you guys offended by saying he said the black one? You should be proud of your culture. You always, I'm black, I'm this, hip hop and stuff. We brought the music. So when somebody identify you by black, you get upset. And this was like the delicate point that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing, I think the points that like maybe a lot of people miss is the fact that like, it's in those languages where they're using the word Negro, like it's deeply rooted in racism, because actually it comes from like Negroid, and that comes from like a very sort of classical interpretation of race, where I think they split it as Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucasoid, right? And so like, obviously Caucasian is still used, but the fact is that it was used as a term. It wasn't like Caucasian was never used as a term to marginalize people or for racism towards white people, right? Whereas Negro and Negroid definitely was. Like the whole idea of splitting people into races was so that you could have a dominance of one race over the other. So I think the fact is like that, like for me, I've had this discussion with one of my friends. He's also a football fan. And I was kind of saying like, okay, is this, you know, obviously people are going to say, oh, what? So we can't say black now. And maybe it's a case of, you know, you don't say it about a person anymore. Like, you know, if you're referring to a person, you couldn't use that word. And it's just like and he was kind of making the point was in the same way that we create things, we can also take them away. Like language was created. It wasn't like it's always existed. Like we've always just used that term. And I think one of the things that I realized, well, there's a few things. One of the things is like football is actually a really great like vehicle for having these conversations. And the second thing was that I feel like, and maybe you can talk on this, is like maybe some cultures and some places like are still quite far behind in the conversation. So I don't know if you felt like when Black Lives Matter was happening, like Spain felt quite far behind, and maybe in the same way Romania is quite far behind, and maybe in the same way, you know, in Latin America is quite far behind. Because I laughed when you said like my little black boy as like as a term of endearment, but obviously like for me, I immediately thought of a very negative thing, right? As a, you know, ownership and that kind of stuff. And maybe, you know, that's just my sort of world viewpoint, and it could be actually a real term of endearment, but presumably it could actually be very much steeped in racism and slavery. So
it could be, actually, it could be. I remember one thing. I go to a barber here, and he's from Venezuela, South America as well. And this is where I actually get to know Negrito is a kind of a nice thing to say to somebody. It's more like a compliment, not anything else. When I went to him and I felt like just like he's gonna be my barber for these years. I'm actually in Spain like recently. I haven't been here in the country for that long. So he's having fun with me. Sometimes he plays Sudanese music for me, you know, on the barber. It's quite sweet, yeah. And it took him a while, and then after like few times he said like, can I please call you Negrito? You know, for us it means I really like, you know, admire you. It doesn't mean anything bad. I don't refer to this. I don't refer to race. It's just like I admire you. And that was okay. How can I reply to this guy? So first of all, I appreciate your kindness. You're being very nice to me, you know. So I understand that, but this word is really grave, and you try to avoid using it. You know, you should not use it. You should really not use it. So, but no, I just mean just for you. It's very special. And then, to be honest, I leaned and said, okay, you can say it just to me, but don't say it to anybody else, because now I understand the context. But I told him the whole story, why this is a grave word, that you should not use it. It's not cool for you to use it at all. It's actually not a compliment. But in our specific case, I kind of understand what you want to say. So go ahead. I gave him the permission. Very specific circumstances.
Yeah. That's a tough one, because like I guess like sometimes on like a large scale you forget that, you know, these kind of structures or systems are ultimately made up of very small, you know, relationships, right? Like, and so it's easy to say like, oh no one can say that, but then, you know, he's really coming to you and you're trying to understand his culture and he's trying to understand your culture, and in the end, you know, you have to find a way to kind of move forward together. And to be honest, I don't know what I would say either.
I know you wouldn't, or so many people would say no, but I don't know, I found that connection quite special. I said maybe he's learning something from this, you know, let's bring him to our side, you know, let's accept him instead of reject him. But he was kind of sensitive and very tricky, and in the moment I had to do something about it. So it's okay, let's educate him a little bit with whatever knowledge I have, and then just move with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm now very curious about, like, because obviously I know where Negro comes from, but I'm more specifically curious now about Negrito, and I now want to read into it to find out, you know, what it's all about. If I ever get faced with that.
Yeah, you should. And I think, I hope someday we all, you know, the whole planet comes to agreement of the, you know, the slavery and segregation, and the word Negro is associated to it. So hopefully we can stop this madness, you know. So like the people are being racist to you, and like by actions and by language and by so many aspects, they don't want to leave you alone. And the second you complain, they say, well, we cannot talk now, so it's political correctness. Yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it is quite complicated. Well, I think we've been having an amazing conversation, but I wanna conclude it and end it by your passion and your love for spoken word. I know you're a poet, and I know you've written some poems here and there, but I want to know how this started, especially being a poet in English. That's for me something really
Mhm.
interesting. So how did this all started?
Um, so I guess like I've I kind of had been writing a little bit like on and off, and then like I don't know, I don't even know if I did it as a kid or I don't really think I did. Um, but then say like when the Sudanese revolution started, I kind of used it as a way for me to channel a lot of the thoughts and I guess my feelings about what's happening. So I had written one or two poems basically before the Sudanese revolution started. Um, and again, some of them were to do with Sudan. And then after that, I just kind of kept doing it and stayed with it. And I feel like, even though I do share some of them on my Instagram, like predominantly, I've got a lot that I've just written and I haven't necessarily shared.
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, it's a great way of kind of, it's like therapeutic in a sense, like you reconciling and you figuring out what's going on. And so then I just started to channel it through the pen really.
Yeah. Have you written anything in Arabic, or it's all English?
um I mean I've got Arabic words in there, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's all it's all in English. Like to be honest, like I feel like Arabic, like poetry in Arabic is just another level. So inshallah, one day I'll have the Arabic skills to write poetry in Arabic. But
Yeah.
um like even when I hear Sudanese poets um that are Arabic poets, they're phenomenal, mashallah. So I feel like there's levels. I'm still at English, then
Yeah. No, I think the comparison is quite unfair between the two languages when it comes to poetry. But for me, since I love the Arabic poetry so much, but I feel the English one is kind of new to me. Like I still trying to figure it out. So when I've seen like you once posted something about praying, and that's the poet, and it was like kind of like new. It's like, why haven't I heard something like this before? Because usually I just listen to the Arabic poetry. So it was completely different, very different. So I don't try to compare them per se, like the English or Arabic, which one is higher. Of course, the two languages are very complicated in their own ways, but the English poetry it's just very interesting, super, super interesting to me.
I think, I mean, I'm still trying to, I guess, develop my style and stuff. But I think like you said, there's with the English, it's almost like it can go in specific directions. Like with like some spoken word artists, they're more kind of musical and they're more with a beat kind of thing, whereas some are kind of, I guess, like much more classical, like classically trained. So I would say I'm definitely on the kind of more sort of musical, and like even sometimes in my head when I'm writing it, I feel like there's a beat there kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
um, but I'm interested. Have you read Tayyip Saleh's books?
I have
Like,
read موسم الهجرة إلى الشمال. That's the only one.
and
And عرس الزين, yeah.
you've read it. You read it in Arabic.
I've read it in Arabic, yeah.
Okay, because basically I think it would take me a long time to read it in Arabic. So, but I do really want to read his books. So, but I just wanted to see if anyone has read in both and a comparison. Like my dad has
No.
said to me, there's no comparison.
Yeah. I think he,
Like,
he written it in English, and then he was like, and then it was translated to, sorry, in Arabic, then it was translated to English, no?
yeah, exactly. So it's even then it's unfair already because it's a
Mm.
it's a translation.
Oh, I thought he written in both languages because he lived in the UK. So I think maybe he wrote it in English and in Arabic.
Yeah, maybe. I know it's been translated to a lot of languages, but
Mm.
maybe it is like sort of native in both English and Arabic.
Yes.
But I think that it's like, I guess, in terms of the, like, I mentioned the kind of the internal aspects of the poetry and the spoken word, in terms of how it helps me and stuff. But in terms of when I share it, like, alhamdulillah, I've had really good responses on a lot of them. And yeah, it's crazy because I think that's like, it's a fundamental human thing, is that we look for resonance in things, like whether it's music or poetry or art, and you write something and you just think, I'm writing this for myself, and then you share it and then people are like, oh, that specific line or this and that, and you're like, okay, you know, that makes you feel like, you know, part of, I guess, something a little bit bigger than just yourself and your thoughts.
Yeah. Although it's quite personal, so like I completely understand when a poet, like, you know, says like, I released 2 or 3 poems and the rest are just gonna be for me, because usually, they express themselves very like deeply, and you know, it's kind of exposing yourself through these poems. If somebody actually reads them and reads behind the lines, they can get to know you. Sometimes you want to keep these things for yourself.
Yeah, it's true. Like, there are some that I'm like, it's very much like on a different, on 2 or 3 different days, you could feel differently about sharing it. Like, there are some ones that are very, very personal, and I'm like, I've been close to sharing them, like, maybe I just do it, you know.
Yeah.
And then some days I'm like, you know what, I can't do this, I can't, you know. So I don't know, I mean, I'm still, like I said, still kind of feeling out the process, but yeah, I'm hoping, inshallah, I can sort of continue to release stuff.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to ask you one last question before we end. Usually, I'm not a poet at all. What I do to write down my ideas, and because my dad always told me that idea does not exist until you write it down. Well, either it's whatever. Yeah. So I usually use the notes application on my phone to write whatever, and I come back to them from time to time and say, wow, did I write this 1 year ago? So I have one note here that says, on the last day of 2019, and I wrote down 2019. What the hell was that? And now, how can I write something for 2020? So do you like draft your poets in your poems in notes, or do you like sit down on a computer, or do you write them down with your pencil?
So I've got like 2 main like note apps that I use. I use like Keep, you know, Google Keep. Usually that's like, for me, I don't know why, but because OneNote is like quite so the other one is OneNote, like the Microsoft one. And OneNote, because it's got like, I guess, like books and chapters and books, sections and pages. Like, for me, I feel like that's 3 level. Like, if I have to decide where I'm going to write something that is a thought that has just come to me, I fear I might lose it, because I'm like, I want to then organize it in a certain place. So what I'll do is, if a thought comes to me, or like sometimes just a few lines will come to me, like you know, the ideas come, sometimes lines will just come. And so then I'll just open Keep immediately on my phone and I'll just type those in. And then, yeah, I guess if I feel that sort of is a like a strong wave in a way, then I'll continue and try and like ride or write through that. And then later on I might move it somewhere else. And then I mean, I do still write in a notebook occasionally. Like, I do a lot of my journaling on paper. So yeah, that's where I've written some of it. But yeah, that's where what I tend to use. But in answer to your, I guess, what are you gonna write for 2020?
No idea. I'm gonna be waiting for the last day and just opening the note, whatever comes to my head, just gonna put it down there. And it's gonna be very difficult to express the feelings and all the emotions through just a few lines on notes. I do this I have this habit of using my notes, you know, for everything that comes to my mind, and try to learn how to express myself better through the notes, you know, better than just talking. Or sometimes you talk to somebody else and they interpret it differently. So I keep it here, you know, in words. So I use it for my birthday, for New Year's, any kind of important occasions, either good or bad. I just use the notes for that. And then I come back to them. I try not to open them until 1 year passes by. But I somehow went through this. I said, really? 2019 was bad? Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, do you have any plans to do like a reflective, like, solo podcast, like at the end of the year, or are you gonna just do?
I do have an episode about how the year was for me. Yeah. It's gonna be just a solo episode, but still in production.
In production. Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, at the moment I'm toying with the idea of a poem, like to end the year. I don't know. Like there was some stuff I wrote earlier in the year, which that's the thing is that I guess, do you ever come back to like notes or ideas and you just wish you would have written more, or you wish you'd have like finished them? So like for me, there's like I said about how it's kind of like a wave. You don't know if that same wave will come again. Like maybe
True.
a different wave will come and you can, but is it going to be the exact one that, and sometimes
True.
you need a different wave. Like sometimes you need, you know, a bigger wave to get you over the line for finishing it. So yeah, maybe we'll see. I guess it is good to be kind of like reflective. And one of the things that, I don't know if you know Gary Vaynerchuk, or I probably pronounced his name wrong, but he's just kind of like motivational guy on Instagram and stuff. And he kind of says like, you don't even need to necessarily content create, you just need to document the process. So like, for example, there are people who, you know, they'd say to you, Hassan, like, how did you set up your podcast? Or, you know, what was your thought process behind it? And if you've documented that either in, you know, text or in a video where you just say, this is why I'm doing it, you know, that's actually really beneficial for people more than you creating content about something that isn't, you know, that. So I think when you're, because we are generally people who are creating things all the time. And so actually, rather than like creating, it's kind of like some people are like, I'm going to make a video today, right? Yeah. But instead of doing that, just document the interesting thing that you were doing already, or the creative thing that you're doing already. And I guess I'm still trying to think of a line to give you for 2020, even though I'm not, you know, not your ghostwriter. But
that's gonna
2020,
take a while.
how do we top that?
Yeah, that could be one. God, that could be one. Could it get worse? I don't know.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, where do we go from here? It's been such a tough ride, such an intense ride. But for me, the most interesting thing about this year, that it was an interesting year for everybody. Like we were all somehow, like we all started on the same boat. But then after that, people went on different ways. Some people decided to stay in the same place and complain. Some people decided to move on. Some people jump off the boat, you know, end their lives. Some people couldn't do it. Some people tried. So we all kind of started together in March or April. You know, the whole world were in the same room. And from there, some people still stuck in that place. And some people just have, like Jeff Bezos, for example, completely in a different planet right now. So yeah, it's easy to complain and, you know, just be negative, but it's not easy just to make real work on the ground and stay consistent with it and, you know, feel good about yourself. That these things are really tough. That's really, really, really tough. I think this year is all about that.
2020, let's leave the room.
Yeah, let's leave the room. Jump
or
off the
2020, you should leave the room. So it's like telling 2020 to leave the room.
Yeah, 2020 leave the room, and at this point now we're gonna leave the podcast as well for you. Hey. So Mohamed Gaafar, I'm sorry, I'm calling you by your full name. I think you're used to Moji, right?
Mohamed Gaafar, Moji, whatever. That's fine with me. Government name, yeah.
As if you've done something bad. No, man, I'm really happy that you actually been part of the podcast, as this episode will be part of the series that I'm creating that's called Sudanese Creators. So I'm happy that you jumped in.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and looking forward to seeing it when it's out. I'm sure you'll be much more diligent than I have been. So
no, it's been fun and easy going. That's the podcast. It's all about that. So yeah, when it's out, inshallah, it's gonna be on YouTube for you to watch our reactions, you know, and everything. And also you can, as always, listen to the podcast on Spotify and Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the other platforms. So that's it. That's the episode of today. I hope everybody's safe. If you're listening to this during 2020, then you can actually relate. If you're listening to this into 2021, it's going to be a completely different world. I don't know. Maybe. So Moji, thank you for coming to the podcast, and hopefully more to come from SDN as well, from you. And we're going to have a lot to talk about for the next years for sure. This is just going to be the start. And yeah.
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, the offer is very much still there for you to come back on, or to come onto my podcast, inshallah, most likely in the new year.
Nice.
So looking forward to that, inshallah.
Nice. Okay, on the description box of this episode, you will find all the links for Moji, for his podcast, for Instagram account, for you can see his poems as well, and also we're gonna link SDN.world, their account, and the amazing work they've been doing, so you can review their work and be part of the future projects as well. So this is me, Hassan Fadl, your host. Stay tuned for the coming episode. Peace out.
Peace.